Good afternoon, everybody. Evening. It is 6:30. I'm going to say evening. It's nearly dark outside right now. I'm just so excited because we've got another Buckeye game starting in about a half hour from now. And what's more exciting is that Jared Smalley is joining me in the NBC4i streaming center. Listen, you millennials in your phones, Jared. Could I get your attention, please?
Who, what, where, how?
We got another Buckeye game. Super exciting. Penn State,
big deal.
I hear.
It's a big night. It's a really big night. I think if you I'm glad you're all watching us, and the kickoff is until 7:44, so take your time. There's more than an hour. Pace yourself tonight. Pace yourself for your refreshments and such. It's going to be, I think, a wildly entertaining game, and that is not some sort of Nostradamus prediction. I mean, you look back at the series the last 5 years. I think the widest margin of victory is 11 points. 2 of the past 3 were decided by a single point. Ohio State had to rally for 2 of those in the fourth quarter, 2017, 2018, incredible games that they had to make dramatic fourth quarter comebacks to win the game. I love it. I think these are the 2 most talented teams in the Big Ten. Both schools are recruiting almost all the players from the other school at some point.
Yeah.
So you add it all up, and regardless of what happened a week ago to both Ohio State and Penn State, clean playing field tonight. And Christine, I would say this: if you've learned anything from today's slate of Big Ten games and games across the country, week to week, this is an entirely different animal. What you saw of Penn State last week, forget it. Mm-hmm. And they, by the way, they statistically dominated that game that they lost, but they dominated the game in the numbers. And what we saw today, Michigan State go on the road, win at Michigan, and really pretty dominant fashion. They did a very nice job. They controlled the game. And it's just week to week, you never know what you're going to get.
You said when we talked on Wednesday with Coach, you and Coach both said it after the upset last week against Indiana, it's still nothing to drop your guard. If you're Ohio State and Ryan Day, they're still a really amazing football team. And I mean, no, there's not the whiteout atmosphere, but it's still a road game. Still got to go there.
Yeah, and there were a lot of hurdles. Obviously, look across the country. It's the thing that obviously we have to talk about, but it's the thing you hope you don't have to, is COVID and how that's affecting teams. And the Big Ten obviously lost a game this week. Illinois starting quarterback today did not play because of a COVID positive test. I've been checking to see with my guys who are at State College about. So apparently Ohio State is clear on a COVID-19 standpoint to go into the evening, but there was a report from a couple of websites here just a few minutes ago saying that Justin Hilliard, the linebacker, I think that was Letterman Row that reported that Justin Hilliard, the linebacker, won't play in the game, but because he failed a initial COVID-19 test this morning, but then on a more thorough test passed it. Mm-hmm. So apparently it was a false positive, which is a part of the COVID realities. And so I'm waiting to kind of get more clarity on that and his availability tonight. But apparently, for the most part, it looks pretty good from that standpoint. It's the thing about a night game. You got to take a COVID test in the morning, and it's a gamble. Ohio State took 74 players on the road this week, and they had to pick very cautiously about who was going to make the trip, the 74 of them. So I think now that that's kind of settled and they can get into the evening of the game, there's no whiteout crowd there. And that's obviously a big change from prior trips, certainly from a communication standpoint. That will not be a problem in the game. That cannot be. That won't be an excuse. It won't be a problem. They'll be able to be fine in that regard. And issue is, can they block and tackle well enough?
Jared, can we go over what the protocol is as far as testing and everything like that, the precautions that the team takes? When do they take tests every single day? Are there certain days where they do the testing? And then how do the guys interact? Do they wear masks in the locker room and on the buses and different things like that? Or are they all tested and then they're a unit together?
No, that's a great question, and it never hurts to be reminded of how they're doing this in the Big Ten. So it is daily rapid COVID-19 testing every morning. They go in first thing and do it. They get the results back roughly 15 to 20 minutes on everybody, and then they make a plan for the day. If there are any issues, they address it immediately, and they go back through contact tracing, and that's how they resolve it at the school level. Obviously, with the outbreaks we've seen this week, the scrutiny is high across the league, and they're wanting to make sure that they do their best to get this under control. in terms of meetings, some of the teams, I'm speaking, I don't know 100% about all the teams in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I do know what Ohio State is intending to do, and they have tried to keep position groups as spread out as far as they can,
Mm-hmm.
have them meeting in outdoor spaces. There is a giant tent outside the Woody Hayes Center that's near Olentangy River Road,
Yeah, I see that.
where they're frequently stopping in there for, they pick up a meal out there, or they'll have a meeting out in a tent outside the Woody on the other side of the building. So they are getting outside, spacing out as much as they can. They wear masks everywhere they go in the building. If you've seen some of our interviews with the players, you'll notice that a lot of the players are actually wearing a mask while they're on camera, sitting in front of a laptop, because they wore it when they walked over. I mean, that's they're wearing it as they walk around the building. So that has become, second nature there, and it's a part of playing football in 2020. And it's certainly taken some adjustment, but here we are. And now you get to finally put that aside for the evening and just try to go play a football game and find out if you're good enough.
For those of you who are just joining us, thank you so much. That was a really good question you guys had about the football protocol and the testing and different things like that. So if you have any more questions like that, let us know in the comments. I'm monitoring them on the main Facebook page here, the NBC4 Facebook page. So let us know if you guys have any questions, and also let us know where you're watching from. So again, for those of you who are just joining us, it's Christine Marconi, Jared Smalley, talking about this big game, night game against Penn State coming up here. Definitely a different atmosphere, but exciting nonetheless.
I think the whiteout factor, I was doing this week. I was counting up my number of trips over there.
It on the screen right there. We've got a preview screen on.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
5 of the past, I think I've been to 6 whiteout games at Penn State, which is, and I would rank them 1 through 6 of the best sporting atmospheres I've ever been in. You've
been to the Olympics, Jay.
Yeah, I've been to the Olympics, but this was not the whiteout. What they do, the organization of it, the unified hate is awesome. I mean, there's just nothing like it. And now, from the visitor standpoint, and Ohio State, 5 of the past 6 times they've played there, they've won. It is one of the most. If you go there and win, it's as good a win as you'll have, and it's as good a win as you'll feel about, because you went in and made 110,000 people shut up. And they love that. It's one of the things that when it's loud and all up against you there, you feel it. And when it is eerily quiet there, it's like slaying the dragon. And that's the thing that these players won't get the opportunity to do tonight. But that won't be noted in history. The history is who won. And that's the objective.
The wins are good, but the losses hurt too. It's only happened, you said 1 out of 5 over the past 5 years?
Yeah, 2016 was the crazy game.
I remember it vividly.
Yeah, 2 block kicks. I think you told me this week that was the last time you cried at a sporting event.
I cry every day, but over a sporting event, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that was an interesting night because Ohio State had the game at hand, really, and had special teams plays cost them dearly. But other than that, you go back to 2005, and that was the Troy Smith at quarterback and Tamba Ali playing defensive end for Penn State, and those were 2 really good teams going at it, and they got the best of them that night. They couldn't Buckeyes couldn't move the ball, but after that, they really kind of got control of the games over in State College. But again, this series is it's perpetually close, nerve-wracking for both sides. We've seen big dramatic comebacks for both sides. Obviously, 2016 for Penn State, and then for the Buckeyes to come back from big deficits in 2017, and then 2018. Remember the crazy Benjamin Victor catch where he reached back up behind his body? That was a had to have it play. Yep. Caught it. They score. The KJ Hill touchdown to win the game, basically. And that was courtesy of the Terry McLaurin block, where he basically came back and took out 3 defenders on the sideline to allow KJ Hill to score the touchdown. That play is legendary at Ohio State because it was a display of selflessness by a receiver who wanted to do anything he could. He basically laid out his body for his team, and they won the game that night. So that's what the series produces, and that's possibly what we're looking at tonight.
You were saying like the top 6 sporting events that you've ever covered. I remember, as a student going to the Penn State games, and those are some of my most memorable.
Yeah.
I think it was my very first night game, that 8 p.m. game in the shoe, back before they had the permanent lights. They wheeled
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
lights. I
Uh-huh.
think it was 2010 or 2011. I'm trying to remember. It must have been 2010 because we had a good team that year. Because 2011 was not the greatest team. I think that was last
That's
time.
right. Yeah, that's right.
Lost to
That
the team
was
up north.
they were 6 and 7 that year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was the 2010 game, my first night game, and I just remember that atmosphere. Just the shoe was rocking that night too.
Yeah, in terms of, and that's what I mean, in terms of sports atmospheres,
Amazing.
they're as good as you can get. And now, I've seen better games, and I've been to I think better stadiums and places like that. But in terms of atmospheres, this is as good as you get, I think, in anything. And it's so fun, and just to hear the build up, and the thing it's one of the reminders of what we're missing right now. I'm thrilled we're playing, and I know a lot of people are thrilled we're playing. Obviously, we wish everything was under better circumstances, but it's a small piece of what it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
and it is that's the difficult part. But you know what? They're playing, and that'll have to do.
Absolutely. Jerry, we got a few questions for you.
Okay.
Russell is just joining us, and he's asking if we had any positives. So kind of go over, if you would, the report that you're seeing from our partners.
From what I hear from State College is that I'll check again and see how many texts I've got here. No, the only thing I know about is that it looks like the team is fine from a COVID standpoint. They did have a false positive this morning.
Okay.
But I believe, at least Letterman Rowe reported that it was Justin Hilliard. I haven't independently confirmed that, so I don't think they're anticipating that Justin would play, even though he passed the more rigorous test. And I'm not 100% sure of the policy on that with the Big Ten on a game day test. Because of the night game scenario, that's why they tested this morning.
Yeah.
So I don't have the answer on that, but I think in terms of the bulk of the roster and everybody, it looks like everything's fine.
Well, they did some logistical things this week. I remember seeing your tweets about that, as far as different coaches driving there rather than being on the plane with the team or on the buses. Refresh my memory about that.
No, you're spot on correct. They took a different tactical approach to give everybody more space on the bus transport from the Woody Hayes Center to the airport, which is Rickenbacker, and then the flight over to State College, which is obviously a very short flight. But they sent more of the personnel, the support personnel who would ordinarily hop on the team plane. They drove. So they took separate cars over to State College, and some of those support personnel got over there yesterday by car. They had the entire hotel to themselves, which was very nice. So the hotel there in State College, they were able to space out there and make sure that their meeting rooms, they had everybody masked and had an appropriate space for everyone to avoid any potential issues. So yes, the logistical challenges involved in traveling during a pandemic are massive.
Yeah.
And that's certainly a part of the game planning to go on the road.
So obviously, students aren't going to be in the crowd as they normally would, but we do have some parents that are going there as well, like we saw last week in the shoe, right?
Yeah, there are parents can go on the road games, and they're allotted tickets, which is interesting. Last week, Nebraska did not use all of its allotted tickets for their parents. And I did not hear anything yet about allotment of. I mean, it's going to be marginal, number of people who will actually be in the giant erector set in State College. Is a big metal building, so you won't see a lot of humans in there tonight, that's for sure. But there will be some Buckeye parents who will be permitted to sit and watch the game.
Got a follow-up question for the Justin Hilliard. Do you know who would be, if he is not playing, the backup for his position?
Well, he's a reserve anyway.
Oh,
okay.
So,
I mean, you're looking at, the three starting linebackers are the same group. It's Bryant Browning, it's Pete Werner, it's Tuff Borland. And then, in the next group you'd have Kevon Pope. You'd have, Taraja Mitchell. You'd have, a bunch of kids who've played, frankly, a bunch of guys who've played a lot of football for Ohio State. So in that regard, linebacker is really probably the deepest position on the team in terms of guys that are experienced, other than maybe probably tight end would actually be more than them, but not by much. They've all played a lot of football. in that room, and very talented room as well. So some of those young guys that are coming in at linebacker are going to be studs over there. And it's a hard thing for them right now because they got a bunch of seniors who are playing football, and it's hard to get on the field. But yeah, depth is not a big concern at linebacker.
That's good. So we got the injury report on Friday. How's everything from last week?
The only concern was Chris Olave. Would he be able to make the bell? We found out yesterday he would be cleared to play. He practiced this week. Ryan Day told us that he had practiced well. Mm-hmm. And, we're not going to speculate on what the injury was, but we can kind of put, 2 and 2 together. Took a really hard hit, was slow to get up, walked off the field with the trainers and never returned. So it's just kind of hard to say, what the severity of that injury was. But, yeah, I think it's critical, Christine, that he's playing because that is a huge problem for Penn State defensively when you figure out how you're going to defend all those receivers. Garrett Wilson is a huge problem as a slot receiver, and we learned that last week. It is going to be all season long. It is going to be really hard for linebackers and safeties to try to match up with him because he's too fast, he's too elusive, and over the long term of a game, over a 4-quarter game, he's just going to get open. And Justin Fields is too good. He's going to find him. So you have to figure out, what do we take away as a defense? We're going to take away the run. We have to take away something and force them to do something else. And that's the problem. If both those guys are out there and healthy, you lose that opportunity. You can't double everyone. You run out of numbers. And that's the why the Olave injury was so critical, I think, to the game plan. And I have him back out there, and I will be, at least we anticipate him playing. He's cleared to play.
Yeah, and just for his health and safety, it was concerning to watch on television.
It was an ugly hit.
It was not good.
Ugly hit. Yeah. And that game was full of ugly hits, if we're being really honest. I mean, a lot of targeting calls. And Jackson Smith and Jigba took an enormous hit near the goal line and popped up, and then a couple plays later makes one of the greatest catches you'll ever see.
Beautiful.
I mean, it's, football's a wild game, but it's also extremely tough. And I got to tell you, man, I think the biggest thing tonight is physicality. I mean, which team owns the line of scrimmage? These are both really, as we alluded to a moment ago, these are both highly recruited kids on both sides, kids that can play, kids that have no lack for confidence. And they expect to go out and dominate the game up front, physically, man-to-man, move a man against his will kind of thing. And these are two lines that think they can do that. And that's where it'll be won. It's very simple. It's can Ohio State run it on first down, and can Penn State stop them? And that's really, to me, the biggest element to watch in the game, because that was, I think, a concern leaving Nebraska, is can they win on first down? Can they move people? And I was surprised. I didn't think they did a good job last week overall. It got better, but even they admitted afterward they didn't move people. They didn't adjust to line stunts and movement by the defensive line as well as they wanted to. So that's top of mind for me.
Cheryl, game kicks off at 7:30. Thank you so much for your question.
Oh, I can update that. 7:44.
7:44.
On the button.
Dang it, Jared! I thought I had a question that I could actually answer for once. Like, hey, Cheryl, 7:30. I got you.
Oh no!
You gotta go.
That's the TV time. But the
7:44
kickoff is critical because Pepsi Sports Saturday at 7:30. We're on. Watch us for pregame, and then when it's time, I'll understand.
I'm sorry, I stand corrected. You're right. Watch Pepsi Sports Saturday. You have Coach.
Coach is with us, of course.
Coach Conley,
yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
And Whitney.
Whitney's going to be holding down the fort.
For sure. She had a really good story this week talking to former players and actually talking about that whiteout atmosphere. Why are you laughing?
No, it's because it was great. It was great.
Awesome.
I was actually listening to some of the interviews she did with Zach Bourne and Todd Beckman. Todd is such a great guy and was a really good football player, really good quarterback at Ohio State.
Yeah.
And to hear their reflections of what it was like to be in that. Here's the tricky thing about the whiteout. So everybody, you obviously know what that is, right? You know what it looks like. But the biggest thing to me about playing at Penn State isn't that. It's the walk from the locker room. The locker room at Penn State is admittedly ungood.
Did you just make that up?
It's very, very much bad. And they walk under the stands to get to the tunnel to go out onto the field. And they bring out these metal barriers to block the fans off. And now they're bringing out like full-size screens, I think, that kind of block their view.
Yeah.
But they used to be able to just walk right up to you, like the team walking out on the field, and these people, I mean, they were night games. They'd been drinking all day, and they had lost their inhibitions, and they said and threw, and like it was ugly. Like you wore your helmet everywhere.
The things we did pre-COVID.
Wow.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah.
Can you imagine a fan getting close to a player right now?
It'd be freak out city.
Yeah. Get away. Get your germs away.
Ew, David.
Ew, David.
I hope, if you're watching this, I hope you like that show that I can't really say.
It's the internet.
It's really good. You know what it is.
You know what it is. If you know, you know. All right, Jared, what can we expect coming up at 7 on Pepsi Sports Saturday?
We're gonna break down the game from a more strategic standpoint about, there are some things that are unique to Penn State that Ohio State's just going to have to address, and one of them is, a week ago Nebraska did not have an elite pass rusher. Penn State does. What's amazing is their best player, Micah Parsons, is not playing. He decided to opt out this season. He'll be a top probably 10 pick in the NFL draft next year. Parsons isn't on the field. If he was on the field, it would be a really tough night of work for Ohio State's offensive tackles. But Nicholas Petit-Frere at right tackle got his first start last week and graded out as a champion. Did a really good job in his first start. You have Thayer Munford on the left side, who also graded as a champion last week, and he's now 3 years as a starter. Shaka Toney is the big defensive end for Penn State.
Great name.
And it's a great name, and he's a great player. He's a phenomenal athlete, very quick. He's a better athlete, than most offensive linemen. And, quick twitch, gets off the ball well, and he's got moves. And, I don't know that he's Chase Young, but he's good. And
people are.
Yeah, few people are. And I think that's a problem for Ohio State to address that tonight, making sure that, Justin Fields has appropriate time. To throw the ball downfield, and in the run game, I don't think he's a big concern, but in the pass game, that's a big worry. Making sure you've got eyeballs, or maybe sometimes you have to slide a protection toward him to help out if that's needed. I think obviously they would like to not have to deal with that, but desperate times call for desperate measures, and we'll see if they get there. But I like Ohio State's offensive front. I know they didn't have a game they would like to have had last week, but man, I think they're super talented, and when they become a cohesive unit, I'm not sure there's going to be many better in the country.
Well, I didn't watch too much football today. Did we see anything special coming out of the SEC or any other teams playing good or upsets today? Just
in the Big Ten alone, Michigan State beating Michigan, I thought, is an enormous power play for the Spartans, considering how they looked last week, and they turned it over a million times against Rutgers, and that's how they lost. Yeah. But, Michigan had a lot of trouble today. They did not look nearly as comfortable. It kind of gives me a thought about where they actually are offensively, because they scored at will on Minnesota, and we learned last night Minnesota is still not very good on defense. So that might have been more of the factor in Michigan's opening appearance than it was. Is Michigan back? And that was the whole story last week. And then, maybe not. They're still pretty good on defense, but they weren't as good today as I thought they would have been. They weren't as dominant as I thought they would have been. So that's an upset. Clemson almost losing to BC with their backup quarterback, their freshman who was starting for Trevor Lawrence. Mm-hmm. That was certainly an eye-opener. And then I think LSU right now is getting the brakes beaten off them by Auburn. And, I would bet if an LSU fan was told you can trade having a terrible year for having a national championship year, they'll take it. But still, that has been a significant fall off. Life after Joe Burrow is not pretty right now in Baton Rouge.
All right, Jer. We got about 6 minutes until NBC4 at 7, and
Sweet.
Then followed up by Pepsi Sports Saturday, and then you guys can watch the Buckeyes kick off around 7:45.
Got it.
Go team.
It's going to be great. I really, and I think if you're watching this game tonight, here's one other thing to watch. Mm-hmm. Last week, Nebraska's quarterbacks ran the ball pretty effectively, and you would expect that. They're two really athletic guys. Adrian Martinez did a nice job at some times. He obviously scored the first touchdown of the game. They didn't defend quarterback run very well. Last week, Sean Clifford, who is from Ohio, went to St. X near Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. Clifford was Penn State's leading rusher as a quarterback. They're down their first two running backs, so they're down to their third and fourth running back right now. The number 3 running back did play against Indiana last week and did a pretty good job, I thought. But Clifford was the leading rusher last week, and that they've got to get that fixed. They've got to be able to defend the quarterback running option. better than they did last week. Clifford's a guy who can, in case of emergency, break open glass, and if it's 3rd and 7, he can scramble for 8. And that's the stuff that kills a defense, physically and mentally. It wears you down and wears you out mentally. And they've got to figure out a way to get them off the field on 3rd down and not converting those. They also have a phenomenal tight end, Pat Freiermuth. Tight end was a problem last week for the Buckeyes, and tight end's a problem for every team in America. Let's be honest. Like, it's hard to defend a really good tight end, a guy that can get open and has great speed and power, and he has all those things. He's probably the best guy in the country, and that's the other thing on 2nd and 3rd down. He's a guy that can, it's like death by paper cuts. They just can get you for 6 yards and keep the chains moving, and that's the thing to watch out for when you play Penn State. You've got to win on 3rd down defensively and 1st down on offense. You got to establish the run. You got to get the line moving a little bit. So, there's a reason to be a little anxious and eager. They're not the same thing, but they're both probably emotions that are okay for tonight.
I am just thrilled that we have football, and I like winning too. Obviously.
You know what we have? We all have each other.
Grew up a Buckeye. I'm sick of each other. Sick of my pod. If you are watching, no, I'm kidding. I love you. Christmas is coming.
Oh man, that was awesome. That's great. I'm proud of you.
Thanks, Jared. All right, guys. Watch NBC4 at 7 here in 4 minutes. And if you want to troll the mighty Ben Gelber, Penn State is his alma mater. So
don't troll. What?
Tweet him.
No.
Whatever.
No,
he's so
don't
confident.
do that.
He can take it.
He is the world's nicest man.
Yeah, but he can troll with the best of them. You know that.
Leave Gelber out of this.
No.
He.
No, you know that if Penn State were to win, which they won't, I'm allowed to say that I am not a sports journalist. I am an Ohio State alumni, and I've never pretended not to be a fan. We made that very clear when I started covering Buckeye games. Anyway, if Penn State wins, Gelber's going to come down there blasting their alma mater. I don't even know what it's called, across the Nittany Kittens or something.
I don't remember I can't think of it.
Who cares?
It's not important.
It's not.
But Gelber is important, so take care of Gelber's heart. It's a lovely man.
Poke fun at him. It'll be fun. So tweet Gelber. Troll him a little bit. Give him a go Bucks. All right. See you on the broadcast side of things, guys. Bye.